Welcome to Spicy Toast Gaming. Thank you for tuning in to Spicy Toast Gaming and our Ekko guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe, and let's get into it. We're going to start off with an overview of the champion just so you can know how they generally play and whether or not this is a champion you want to invest your time and shards into. So first we have Predict. Predict is the main mechanic for Ekko. When you activate Predict, it pulls 3 random cards out of your deck. You choose one of them to place on the top of your deck so that the next card you draw is going to be that card. So that is what his entire kit is based around, is that mechanic. Also, created cards. So certain cards or abilities are able to create new cards and either put them in your hand or put them in your deck. And Ekko is really built around utilizing those created cards. So if you like being able to generate new cards and then try to fish for them with a Predict or then play them from your hand, Ekko is pretty good for that. Next we also have Draw. Ekko has a lot of built-in draw so that once you've predicted, you can then grab that card that you put at the top of your deck and use that. So a lot of draw built into his kit baseline. Combo. Ekko has a lot of different combo cards, so some rally your entire board and then, or revive it, rally, and then you can attack. One makes an entire ephemeral army and starts a free attack. There's different combo mechanics that are built into his kit, and so there's a lot of interesting things you can do with Ekko. His games often play out very differently from one another. Slow. Ekko is pretty slow deck. I think he took me longer to level than anyone else. Quite often you are taking a long time to finish your matches. And lastly, we have high investment. So I find Ekko rather weak early. I didn't really get some very good games with him until much further on. So he's going to take a lot of time and potentially a lot of shards to really get the most out of him. Alright, that's it for the overview. Let's go in-game and further discuss Ekko, his abilities, and his deck. In-game now with Ekko, we have him at level 20 and 2 stars. He is a 4-cost champion with 4-2 and quick attack, and then strike, create a fleeting time trick in hand. So that time trick right here, 2-cost burst, predict, then draw 1. And this is a created card, just like we talked about before. And this is predicting and then drawing 1. So essentially, you're putting a card in the top of your deck, and then you're immediately grabbing that card with the draw. So anytime you gain a strike, he is doing that. And then level up, you've predicted 4 or more times. When I level up, create 3 chrono breaks in your deck. So another card for Ekko, chrono break, revive all allies that died this round, and then rally. Very, very impactful. You can either block with all of your units, doing normally what would be bad blocks because your units are going to die, but then you're able to pull this out, revive your whole board, rally, and attack. Then he levels up and now goes to a 5-3, and your strike creates a fleeting 0-cost time trick in hand. Also, it was fleeting before, just think I forgot to mention that. So now the time trick he's generating, same thing as before, but now it doesn't cost anything. Since they are fleeting, though, you want to try to use it that round. Ekko's champion spell, is called Shot. So you draw 1, and then you create a parallel convergence in your deck and create a Ekko in your deck since it's his champion spell. Now that parallel convergence, that is over here. There's another great combo card. Start a free attack with an exact ephemeral copy of each ally. So you want to normally have a full board, and then you can use this to attack with all of them. Or one thing you can do, if you have a smaller board, you can use this, have this attack with all these ephemeral copies, all those copies die, and then you could use a chrono break to revive them all and rally again, and you essentially just duplicated all of your units. So there's a lot of interesting things and different ways you can play with all of his spells. Let's go take a look at his star powers. So his 1 star, when you see a unit in a predict, grant it 1/1. So you predict, you're pulling up 3 cards. If it's a unit, then it's going to get 1/1. Even if you don't grab that unit, it's still getting that 1/1. So sometimes you might want to grab a spell in a predict or hold off on grabbing a unit so it can keep getting buffed up if you keep seeing it multiple times. His 2 star plus 1 starting mana, your created cards cost 1 less. Now, this is a very straightforward, kind of boring 2-star power. It's the same as Wild Inspiration, a common power you can pick up in game. But this does help out Ekko a good amount as he's making a lot of created cards. And then there's a lot of fun things you can do with this. Like if you get Blade's Edge, or there's different powers in game that create a fleeting card for you every single round. Normally that card costs something. Now you can just play that for free. There's a lot of interesting combos and ways you can use this. Also, you can use this and stack it with a Wild Inspiration to make all your created cards cost 2 less. So it is pretty straightforward, a little boring, but it does actually open up a lot of unique things for you to do. His 3 star, when you see a unit in a predict, grant it 2/2 and a random keyword. I think Riot is really trying to move away from just making the 3 star a straight up doubling effect, which is great. It's nice to have another bonus. So when you see a unit in predict, you get that 2/2, and then they just get a random keyword. So that can be helpful sometimes. Nice little bonus to have. So let's go take a look at his starting deck. So drop border. If you see me in a predict, summon me. So if you predict and one of the 3 cards is this drop border, it will just immediately grab it and play it on your board if there's space. If there's not space, then it won't get picked up automatically. So this is a fine card, especially with that pickaxe, if you have to play it and like spend that mana, but you want to try to see this in a predict. One thing, a little bit of a spoiler, but one power that's very good for Ekko is counterfeit copies. So you can use that to place created copies of a card into your deck. So if you have this in hand, you can then use counterfeit copies on it, stuff a bunch of them into your deck, and that way when you predict, you're just summoning these cards, a bunch of them for free. We have Fallen Feline. When I'm summoned, create a Hextech Crystal in the bottom 10 cards of your deck. That Hextech Crystal, created card, so it's going to cost 1 less if you have your 2 star. If you see me in a predict, draw me, deal 2 to enemies and the enemy nexus. So this should probably say deal 2 to all enemies. So all enemies on the enemy board will all take that 2 damage and the 2 damage to the nexus. Very, very strong. So your 2 drops are both very, very important. The drop border, trying to see that in a predict to summon them, and then the Fallen Feline, you're trying to get one of those crystals in a predict so you can pull it out. One thing I didn't mention before, when you predict, it essentially shuffles your whole deck. So these start in the bottom 10 cards of your deck, but once you predict, even if you don't see one, you will have shuffled your deck so that those will have moved out of the bottom 10. We have Amateur Aeronaut. So this is decent once you get that ancient coin. So 2 cost, 2/3 elusive. This is really good if you're using the corrupted star fragment. That lets Ekko kill the unit to his right that he's supporting. I guess it'd be his right, our left, whatever. The unit he's supporting is going to get killed, and he's going to get their stats and keywords. And he can get that elusive, so that's very nice to have. Iterative improvement, so pick a follower, create a copy of it in hand with 1/1. Since you're creating a copy of it, it's going to cost 1 less. You can do this for either one of your units or the enemy units. So you pick a unit that's on the board, create a copy of it in hand, and it goes up by 1/1. Often you want to use this on your Fallen Feline. You're going to get a version that's a bit better and then free, and then you're going to be making more crystals for you to try to fish for with those predict and try to grab. Time Trick, this is the same thing that Ekko generates when he strikes. but these aren't fleeting. So predict, draw 1, burst speed, and then gets that hand sensor, so if you pick a unit, put it on top, they're going to get buffed up. Time Winder. This card kind of sucks until you get the Charging Sigil. I believe that's at 15. So to play, discard 1, deal 1 to an enemy or the enemy nexus, and 1 other. So essentially you get to choose 2 targets, one of them can be the nexus, and with the Charging Sigil you deal 3 damage to both of them. So this is very powerful once you get that sigil. Kind of sucks before then. Veteran Investigator. When I'm summoned, all players draw 1. So just a way to get a bit more draw. And Practical Perfectionist. Play, predict, create 3 copies of the chosen card in your deck. So you predict, you get those 3 cards, you pick one of them to go on the top of your deck, but when you pick that card, she then creates 3 copies of that card and shuffles them into your deck. Since they're created cards, they're going to cost 1 less than. And then you get the Philosopher's Stone, so you're then drawing the card that you picked as well. As you can see, his whole deck is pretty cheap. So during the mid and late game, quite often you'll end up playing just massive amounts of cards, especially if you're creating a lot of cards. They all are cheaper. Very nice. They all cost pretty cheap. And then Ekko costs 4. If we look at champion levels, at 21 here, the Veteran Investigator gets the Phage, so pretty nice power spike, pretty late in the game. 24, Veteran Investigator gets Skirmisher's Saber. And then 27, Iterative Improvement gets Mana Potion. So those are the only items we didn't touch on. And that's why the Investigator doesn't really look that great right now, but he's missing 2 items. So for relics, one thing I started running is Corrupted Star Fragment and the Scourge's Stash. So you try to cheat him out for a bit earlier, and then you use the Star Fragment to buff him up, and then normally try to grant him that Elusive from his 2-drop. He is pretty weak, and so you have to do something to try to protect him, because he's quite often just going to get Mystic Shot or something like that and taken off the board very easily. Since he is pretty cheap, getting Archangel Staff on him, not bad. Crown Guard, when I level up Rally, normally is not too great. With Ekko, his level up isn't giving you a massive power spike. It's just putting these copies that you then need to try to find in your deck. So Crown Guard Inheritance, not the best for him. Gale Force, he's a little too expensive for me to want to play him every single round. But you can get those multiple strikes off. You could run Green Glade Shadeleaf with Corrupted Star Fragment. You'd have to put that first to give them Elusive and then consume them. But since you already have Elusives in your deck, I think this isn't as good. So the Blade Rack Challenger is very, very good on Ekko. And so giving that to Ekko and then also his units, pretty helpful. I played a couple games with this and it was fairly strong. So Stalker's Blade and Gatebreaker, both of them when I'm summoned, this one strikes an enemy. Gatebreaker, you summon the Nexus. Since you do have that strike effect, it is decent. Not really amazing, but you do have synergy with striking, so it's not bad. Berserker's Buckle, you don't normally want to get hit, so I would only use this if you're trying to go for a Corrupted Star Fragment build. Gatebreaker, like we talked about. Deceiver's Crest, I wouldn't bother going with this, but the Grand General's Counterplan works very, very well for Ekko. Played with this, it is quite fun. So round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. So you're creating the card, and if Ekko's then still on the board, it's just going to be transitioned into his champion spell. This is very nice because if Ekko dies, you can then play a copy of him for 1 less. So it gives you a bit of a safety net, but when you play it, you get the called shot. So you get to draw 1, but then create that parallel convergence. Also, this costs 2, but since it's going to be a created version, it's going to go down to a 1 cost. So you're drawing one, but then you're going to be creating this parallel convergence somewhere in your deck. So start a free attack with an exact ephemeral copy of each ally. This is very, very powerful. Also notice that all of these 3 spells are all slow. So we're going to touch on this later, but the power, slow but steady, doubles all your slow spells. This is why it works well on Ekko. So his champion spell is going to keep making, every time you cast it, this parallel convergence in your deck. Parallel convergence, very, very strong. So just casting this every single round for 1 mana, if you can cheat him out earlier and then start doing this, like I'll probably would use this for my 3rd slot, then by the mid game you're starting to just pull out a ton of these very, very powerful spells, and it can really help you end the game and just attack multiple times in the same round with essentially a ghostly army of all your units. Very fun, has good synergy with that created copy. Overwhelm, not as important with Ekko. Most of his units don't get that big, and then you do have elusives. Not really quite as important. Spell Shield can be nice. You are very weak. Having a way to protect yourself is pretty good. Lost Chapter, you do have a lot of spells. Not bad to use that. Chameleon's Necklace, getting a couple more copies can be decent, but really one that is great for Ekko is this Challenger. So throwing this in a common slot really gives you a good combo of Quick Attack Challenger. He has decent attack value, so letting you attack safely and get your strike off, great. It's always the worst feeling when you have an Ekko on your board and you want to attack, you want to get that strike to get your predict off, but they have a unit you know it has too large of a health pool, it's just going to block and kill your Ekko, and so you can't actually attack with them. So Challenger, very nice to be able to pick a weak target, hopefully kill them, but even if you don't kill them, if you can just safely get your strike off and make your predict, that is still very nice to have. All right, that's it for the in-game portion. Let's go take a look at powers. There's quite a few that I suggest, and then some support champions. All right, up first for powers. As you probably noticed, these look a little weird, so I couldn't get these powers, couldn't get a screenshot of them in-game, and I couldn't find a good picture online, so we made them. Feral Senses, Epic, Round Start, create a fleeting Feral Presence in hand. That Feral Presence, it's a 0-cost predict, so lets you level up your Ekko very easily, and then you just have more ways to predict and try to fish for those important cards you're putting into your deck. Great to have. It isn't epic, so it's going to be pretty rare, but works very, very well on Ekko. Chrono Break, that's not the actual name of the card. I forget what the name of the card is, but it's game start, create 3 Chrono Breaks in your deck. That's the same effect as Ekko's level up. He does the exact same thing, but this is just starting the game with them. As they are created, they're going to cost 1 less, so they're going to cost 2, and that is the card of Revive all units that died this round, or all friendly units, all allies that died this round, and Rally. So having those put into your deck at the start of the game does work quite well. On to the next group of powers. These I actually have screenshots of. So Slow but Steady, when you play a slow spell, copy it on the same targets. We touched on this before, but Ekko has 3 powerful slow spells as part of his kit, and so being able to double all those can have quite a large impact. Enfeebling Strike, when you damage an enemy, reduces power by the damage dealt. This is really nice for letting you last and try to survive into some of those longer games. You have a lot of ways to deal damage to the enemy without them damaging you back, so you can use that to try to reduce their attack and survive. Like those crystals that you're putting into your deck, they deal 2 to everything, so playing one of those, even if you don't kill everyone, reducing their power by 2 each, massive. You can play a couple of those. Enfeebling Strike works out pretty well, great defensive power for Ekko. Quick Draw, cards you draw cost 1 less this round. You have a lot of ways to draw cards, and so this is a great ability, especially paired with making your created cards cost 1 less. Pretty much none of the cards you're going to be playing will be their full amount, It pairs quite nicely together and just lets you be crazy in the mid and late game, playing tons of cards for very, very cheap. So some more powers that we touched on earlier. So Bouncing Blades, round start, create a fleeting Blade's Edge in hand. That's normally a 1 cost, deal 1 to anything, but if you have your 2-star power, it's now a 0 cost, do 1 to anything. So very nice to have, either chip down the enemy nexus every single round, or gives you a bit of removal or an easy way to break spell shields. Counterfeit Production, round start, create a fleeting 0 cost counterfeit copies in hand. That counterfeit copies, you pick a card in your hand, you put 4 created copies of it in your deck. So this is great for, like we said before, putting those drop borders, that 1 cost, if you see it in a predict, just summon it. So essentially playing it for free. You can put those into your deck, or the crystals you can get, you can have it in your hand, fill your deck with a bunch more of those crystals, and any card you're putting in there, it's all going to cost 1 less. So works really, really well with Ekko. Definitely try it out if you see it. Gearing up, game start, summon 2 armed gearheads. Those armed gearheads, they have augment. That means that when you play a created card, they get 1 more power. Since you're playing a ton of created cards, they are able to scale up very quickly and can be a large threat to the enemy. Very powerful. Definitely try this out if you see it. All right, last group of powers here. Spellslinger. Your spells cost 1 less. You have a ton of spells in your kit as Ekko. This works very, very well. Sorcery, round start, refill your spell mana. Again, you have a lot of spells. Being able to play those every round, very nice. And then Wild Inspiration, your created cards cost 1 less. So essentially the same thing as your star power. Being able to double up on that, it's going to give you a ton of freedom to play the cards you want. Most of your created cards are going to only cost 1 or 2 anyways. So getting 1 of these will essentially mean your created cards are free. You don't have to worry about spending the mana to play it. So pretty good. Might want to consider grabbing this if you see it. It already has good synergy and you're just doubling down on what you're already trying to do. All right, on to support champions. As always, we don't just want to give you a list of champions. We want you to think through why you might want to choose certain ones. So first we have Augment. Augment, like we touched on before, if a unit has that, if you play a created card, they go up 1 in power. So any deck you see that has Augment, it's also generally going to have ways to create cards. So it's further synergizing with your kit quite well, and then they can scale up to be very strong. Next we have Predict. Any other decks that are using Predict, great synergy, again, doubling down on what you are trying to do. So for a Augment champion, Victor is a great choice. He levels up once you've played, I believe, 7 created cards. You'll be able to do that very easily. And then his kit has ways to create cards. Again, working together very, very well. For Predict, Zillion, got him once as a support champion. Was a lot of fun. He brings a lot to the table, ways to grab some of your cards and put them back in your deck. So if you happen to draw like a drop border and you don't want to have to play it for free, he has ways to put that back in your deck so you can try to fish for it with a Predict and find it. A lot of good synergies and pairs very well together. All right, that's it for the Ekko guide and all of the guides for the new champions. So we've now finished guides for all of them. Check the channel if you haven't seen a guide for someone and you want to see them. Every single champion in the game now has a guide for them. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching that video all the way to the end. If you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe. We're putting out multiple videos every single day for Path of Champions content. So if that interests you, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and welcome to the channel. Have a great day.